Good afternoon, folks. Jose Torres, sailing vessel Reverie. I wanted to give you an update on what we have going on today. We're almost completely done putting the first coat of fairing compound on the hull. So I'm going to show you a little bit of how we go through that process, because I have a few patches left that we missed when we did the big sections of the hull. And the other thing we have to work on today is I got to fill up the holes where the rudder shoe screws go through. And I'll show you that in a little bit of a close-up. Challenge with that is that the holes that are there are not straight. So we can't just basically drill the holes on the shoe ahead of time. We're going to have to fill the holes, kind of present everything the way it's going to go, and then drill the holes to support the shoe, and then drill the hole where the rudder post is going to come into the shoe. So I'll show you a little bit of a close-up on that. But should be a pretty close day. I also want to show you what happens when low-level current eats up your metal underneath. I have a good example from the shoe that we removed and the new shoe that we are going to install. So let me take you around to show you first the section of the where the shoe is going to get installed. So a little bit of a closer look at where the shoe gets installed. The shoe slides underneath, and there's two bolts that support it, in addition to a key slot that is underneath. If you can see, this gray area here is a different color than the rest of this keel. What that means is that they fill the holes in the past to fix the shoe or remove it for whatever reason, and then they had to re-drill the holes in order to remount the shoe. So what I'm going to do today is fill these holes again with structural epoxy. So it's really the epoxy with a structural filler that's going to be really dense, because this is going to hold the entire weight of the rudder. So when this shoe is mounted, these two screws are the thing that keeps the shoe in place, and it supports the weight of the rudder that's going to come down here. So let me show you a little bit about the side view. With the new shoe, the rudder post is here. We have to measure it so it lands perfectly in the spot on the shoe where it's going to be supporting. Otherwise, we create friction, and that's going to, over time, eat up the base of the shoe. So here we have the original rudder shoe. That's what it's called by Pearson. Some other people use different names. Is going to be depending on who you ask, you're going to get an answer. But the proper name is the shoe, and this supports the rudder post from going outside of the boat. Now, as you can see, and I hope you can see it here, you can see that these two screws were installed at an angle. That means that when they re-drill to mount the screws, they didn't go straight in. They basically drill a hole and then re-tapped the end and put the screws through, so it's not perfectly parallel. So trying to make this match on a brand new shoe is almost near impossible. So it's better to fill the holes and then re-drill so you can get proper alignment on the shoe. Now, if you can see, that was the original, or what's left of the original bronze, I guess, on the shoe. You can see this is all pink, and if you look underneath, you can see where there's still nickel on the bronze, and where the pink area is where the metal was completely depleted by electricity, by low-level current. You can see also the damage here on the base of the shoe, and you can see how improper alignment over time just eats up into the shoe. Now, it took a long time for this to get this level of damage. But it's something that could have been prevented, and with a little bit of care, and we're going to do it the right way, so we don't have to go through this process all over again. Now, this is the new shoe, nice shiny bronze. It has dimples where the holes are supposed to go on both sides. So one screw is going to come from this side, one screw coming from this side. Now the key, if you notice, is smaller than the key slot. So in the past what they did, they must have used some kind of JB Well or really hardened putty of some kind to fill the empty space around the key, and we're going to have to do that in order to set it up. And the other thing is, you can tell that's going to be an alignment trick, I guess, to get the hole drilled in the proper place. And you know, you only get one shot at it, so measure a bunch of times and mark it properly before you go drilling the hole. But this, in order to do this, we have to fix the holes and fill them up. Okay, so let me show you a little bit of what I'm using today for the job. I have some acetone to clean up the surfaces. I'm using the West System 105 with a 206 Slow Hardener resin, hardener. That gives me plenty of time to work with the mix before it starts getting hard. Now I'm using the 404 high density adhesive filler. This is what West System recommends when you need something that's going to be structural, and it provides excellent compressive strength. So since those holes are going to hold the or a portion of those holes is going to hold the screws in place that are holding the shoe, this is what's going to work the best. And the Interlux Watertite Epoxy, which is what we've been using on the hull. I'm going to mix what I have left here to finish up a few spots. Just some mixing sticks, painter's tape, wax paper. This is for the filling up the holes, because since I have the hole already going up both sides, in order to keep the material in, once I pump it out the other side, and the way I'm doing that is I got this fillable caulking tubes where I'm going to mix the epoxy, put it in here, and then put it on a regular caulking gun and fill in the hole with this. When it starts coming out the other side, I'm going to put some wax paper and tape to make sure that it provides some resistance in order to fill the entire hole. And then I'll put more wax paper on the side that I'm pumping the resin through and taped it in place so it has time to sit in place and cure hard in the hole. So that's our plan. So I'm going to mix this pretty thick so it stays in and doesn't run out. So that's what it looks like on the can. You have the mix and the hardener. Alright, so when you put it in, it's going to go blue. And then when it dries, it's going to dry kind of a brownish, purplish color. Alright. My beautiful wife. Well, good news is that I'm almost done. Bad news is that I run out of the watertight, so I only have a few spots left to finish. So I'm not gonna get another can of watertight. I think I'm just gonna mix a small batch of epoxy with filler, and I'm gonna finish fairing up the few spots I got left. It works just as well. The thing with the watertight is it's a one-to-one mix, like I showed you earlier, so it's really easy to put it together, mix it, and get it on the hull versus mixing the resin, then start kind of guessing and adding filler to get it to the right thickness and then put it up on the hull. So the watertight definitely saves you a bunch of time, and you have just as good as a finish once it's done, it's gonna dry like this, brown, and the sand is really just to take the tops, this little peaks out and the little excess out to get a nice smooth surface so we can put in the epoxy barrier coat. So let me mix a batch and kind of finish up. So I mix a batch of epoxy with a 410 filler, and if you want a consistency that is a little runny but not too much, it's kind of like a smooth peanut butter almost, so when you put it on the hull it's going to stay, it's not going to run out. So let's give this a shot. Now with this, you want to try to leave as little as possible. Basically, you just want to fill the gap because everything is going to require sanding, and the epoxy is going to be harder to sand than the watertite. So just try to scrape out as much as you can without unfilling the holes. Now the other reason for using the slow hardener is for this same reason, so you have time to work with the batch. All right, so let's gonna do a little prep first. The reason I'm using wax paper is because epoxy will not stick to it. So I'm going to stick these two pieces on the port side of the holes on the keel. All right. Every time you're dealing with, compounds like this, you definitely want to wear a mask. You don't want this stuff getting in your lungs. So protect yourself. So that's what the 404 looks like. It's almost like baking powder, the consistency of baking powder. So I gotta make a batch big enough. I don't want to waste a lot, but I have to have enough to fill the hole. So I'm gonna try to go about maybe half of this container, and this is about 10 ounces total. So I'm gonna try to make about 5 ounces mix. So let's. Sorry about that, ran out of battery on my camera. So just real quick to recap, what I just did is I mixed the 106 epoxy with a 206 hardener, and what it does is it gives me about 20-25 minutes to work with it. Then I mixed in the 404 and made it thick like a putty, maybe a little bit less than a putty. fill in the tube, cut the tip, and then we pushed it, I'll show you here in a sec, into the holes. So now you see the holes are filled, and I put the wax paper on top to try to get a flat surface and let it harden, so we can come in, and when we mount the shoe, then we can drill a new set of holes and not have to worry about the exit point or trying to match the holes from the old shoe. So we're gonna have to let this cook for about a day, probably let it cook a little longer just to make sure it's really hard, because that's gonna take the screws for the shoe, and we want to make sure that they're nice and tight, as that is what holds the bulk. This is the exit, so as you can see, it gets a little messy on this side, but it got the work done, which is what I was looking for. And now what we have to do is let it sit, and the job will be done. All right, gang, thank you very much for watching this update. Any ideas or questions, please feel free to write to me through the Facebook link or via Facebook Messenger. Next time I do an update is really going to be covering the dripless shaft seal. So I didn't know a lot about dripless until I was cleaning the bilge on the area behind the shaft, and I bumped this thing and it started leaking. So this is the shaft seal that was on my boat. It's a dripless. It's a PSS model from PYI, but this is not what I'm putting back on the boat. And the next time I do an update, I'm going to try to tell you guys a little bit about dripless and some of the pros and cons, and also you know, what are some of the things you need to be aware of before you decide that you want to put this on your boat. So with that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Talk to you later.